Hello, we're starting off our Pokemon Red Nuzlocke. I've never done one before, but I was always interested in the idea of one after watching a few people go through theirs. First we name our character Smeghead. We next name our rival. I decided to give my rival the name of Dick Butt. Next we head to my PC and withdraw the potion that is stationed inside. Next we wander into the long grass and Professor Oak comes to retrieve us. We end up back at his lab and are given 3 choices of which Pokemon we want first. I pick Bulbasaur and nickname him Bulbarus. Dick Butt picks up Charmander and we have our first battle. The first battle is obviously a very simple battle, it being the training battle. Dick Butt sounds like Charmander and I send out my Bulbasaur. We have a couple of scratches and tackles and growls and more scratches and more tackles and more growls and more tackles and more scratches. My Bulbasaur nearly dies, which would have been an embarrassing run to the end of the run. Luckily I've picked up that potion from my PC and we defeat Dick Butt. He decides to take his Pokemon and leave. Later we travel to Viridian City's mart and receive Professor Oak's package. We're tasked with handling Professor Oak's package and we take it back to him in Pallet Town. We deliver the package to Professor Oak and he tells us that it's the custom Pokeball that he ordered. Suddenly Dick Butt shows up and Professor Oak wants to tell us about his lifelong dream to become a Pokemon Master and collect all 151 Pokemon. We're each given a Pokédex and we're told to go on our way to collect 151 Pokemon. Shortly after that, we return back to the Pokemart to buy us a couple of Pokeballs so that I may catch other Pokemon that I come across. With our newly equipped Pokeballs, we rush out into the field and catch our first Pokemon, a level 3 Pidgey. We nickname our Pidgey Chirpy Boy. We head into Viridian Forest and catch ourselves a Weedle. I nicknamed the Weedle Needles for his later evolved form. Next, we catch a Caterpie and I nickname it Slamworm. For some reason I cannot remember, probably because I didn't have a name to go with, so I just went with the Futurama reference. Just outside of Pewter City, we managed to catch a Rattata. I called this one Bitey.
I call the big one Bitey.
After some training, our Weedle finally evolves into a Kakuna. It later evolves into a Beedrill. Finally, after a long time of off-screen training, we're ready to face Brock. Brock sends out his Geodude, and I send out my Bulbasaur. My Bulbasaur uses Vine Whip and knocks out Geodude in one hit. Next he sends out Onix, and once again after the tackle I use another Vine Whip, and that too knocks him out in one hit. Looks like Bulbasaur really whips the competition into shape. We knock out Brock with absolutely no challenge whatsoever and we obtain our very first badge, the Boulder Badge. Leaving Pewter City behind us, we end up in Mount Moon, where I catch a Jigglypuff. Now, at the time I couldn't really think of a good name for Jigglypuff, except for the fact that Jigglypuff's a pink, just a round pink Pokemon, and I figured the funniest name to give a Jigglypuff would be Boris. Next, I meet a nice man who's willing to sell me a Magikarp for only 500 Pokédollars. What a steal of a deal. I buy it and I decide to name it Carpe Diem in an act of utter pretentiousness. After fighting a hiker in Mount Moon, Bulbasaur decides to evolve into Ivysaur. We beat the super nerd guarding the fossils, and my Metapod evolves into a Butterfree. Heading into Cerulean City Gym, we fight the first trainer. At the end of the fight, Pidgey evolves into Pidgeotto. Whilst training for the next gym, I catch an Ekans that I had managed to call Cobra. Finally, we're ready to fight Misty after all the off-screen training. Misty sends out her Staryu, and I send out my Bulbasaur. I tell my Bulbasaur to use a Vine Whip attack. After finally knocking out Staryu, Misty sends out her Starmie. I continue to use a collection of Vine Whip, Leech Seed. Luckily Starmie is weak to Vine Whip attacks, and my Bulbasaur really whips the competition into shape. After a somewhat easy fight against your rival, using primarily Jigglypuff to sing enemies to sleep and then do damage over time, this match wasn't a real challenge. There was a very slight chance that Charmander nearly killed me whilst I was trying to get it to sleep. Luckily, I was able to get past that without worrying too much. Sadly, whilst crossing the Nugget Bridge, I made a fatal mistake and switched to Cobra, which was instantly killed. The second team member to die, being beaten out by a Rattata. We head to the Pokemon fan club. We talk with the chairman, who clearly loves his Rapidash a little too much. After his incredibly long and slightly disturbing devotion to Rapidash, he gives us a ticket for a bike. Next we head to Diglett's cave, where we catch a Diglett and we nickname it Cerberus. After reaching Vermilion City, we come across an Oddish. I capture the Oddish and we call it Beatman. After systematically clearing the ship, we come across our rival. After a short but swift victory, we move on to see the captain. After we beat our rival, we head into the captain's quarters, where he is being violently ill. We rub his back and gain the HM cut. We meet up with Lieutenant Surge and we defeat him in a decisive victory using our Diglett. On our way to Rock Tunnel, we capture a Spearow, which I creatively name Sparrow. On the way through Rock Tunnel, our Diglett evolves. We head onwards past Lavender Town into Cerulean City, where we find a Team Rocket member guarding a poster in a gambling shop. Once we've reached the end of the secret rocket base, we come across Giovanni. Luckily for me, I have my Dugtrio that has ground type moves. Once Dugtrio has finally beaten off all three of Giovanni's Pokemon, Giovanni leaves and he drops the Silph Scope. We can now head back to Lavender Town to deal with the ghost. We head back to Pokemon Tower and our rival is there waiting for us. He challenges us to a battle and once again we easily wipe the floor with him at this point in time. We finally make our way to the top of the Pokemon Tower, where we encounter the ghost of the dead Marowak. Using the Sylph Scope, we're able to unveil the ghost's identity and see that it is indeed the form of Marowak. Once we put the dead Marowak's soul to rest, we have to fight through 5 different Team Rocket grunts to reach Mr. Fuji at the end. We reach Mr. Fuji to rescue him, and he tells you that he came of his own accord and that you didn't need to really bother. Once we get back to his house, he decides to give us a Poke Flute that will let us awaken sleeping Pokemon. At this point we can then go back to Celadon City and awaken the sleeping Snorlax. Unfortunately, during the battle I lost Boris, and I was also unable to catch Snorlax. The first battle with Snorlax ended up with me causing Snorlax to faint, so I head to the second location where Snorlax is resting, and we managed to capture him. I nicknamed the sleeping Snorlax Your Mum. We enter the Safari Zone and we look for the Golden Teeth and the secret house that gives out Surf. Next we head back to Celadon City to face Erika, the 4th gym leader, in a fight for the next badge. This fight was relatively easy as I primarily used my dog trio and used Dig. After the fight we head directly to Fuchsia City to deal with Koga, the poison gym leader. Now this was also another relatively easy fight thanks to using Dig again. Dog trio really came through for me for the previous two previous gym fights. So this was also another great use of Dog Trio and his ground type moves. After that we head to Saffron City to deal with Team Rocket in the Sylph Co building, where we fight our rival once more and also the leader of Team Rocket, Giovanni. Once we've defeated Giovanni, he decides to leave. He pulls Team Rocket out of Saffron City, and the CEO of the company decides to give us a Master Ball as a reward, as well as receiving Lapras, which I named Nessie, after the Loch Ness Monster. Next we head back to Saffron City to face Sabrina, the teenage Pokemon trainer, and we send out Rick Ghastly. Unfortunately, in Gen 1 Pokemon games, Ghost Pokemon are actually weak to Psychic Pokemon, despite the anime saying otherwise, and he goes down rather quickly. I try to use my Paris. Unfortunately he does not do too well either, and we have to pull him out. I switch back to Snorlax, and Snorlax is handling most of it. Unfortunately Snorlax goes down. We send out the King, and he's also down, but thankfully Dog Trio is at the end to sort it out once more, quickly becoming the power of my team. Next up I go through the Pokemon Mansion, find out about the existence of Mewtwo and Mew. We get the secret key, and we now challenge the gym leader Blaine. Next we head to the Seafoam Islands where Articuno is sitting in wait. Now luckily this is a relatively easy one. I tried the first Pokeball, I send Articuno to sleep, and after the second one we get a lucky catch just as Lapras is about to die. I nickname Articuno Frieza, which is actually the Japanese name for Articuno. Next up I head to the abandoned power plant, ignoring any item balls that are on the ground, as I know that some of them are Electrodes and Voltorbs. I just can't remember which ones are which, so I decided not to bother and just completely ignore those. I head to the abandoned power plant due to the fact that in here Zapdos is lying somewhere in wait, as soon as I remember how to get to her. After a couple of tosses we finally get Zapdos. I nicknamed Zapdos Sparky, mostly because I remember that being the name of a Pikachu in the anime, and frankly that was the only name I could really come up with. Zapdos isn't really particularly my favourite type of Pokemon, but I need as many legendaries as I can get for the final push on the Elite Four. Oh, here it is. We're finally at the Indigo Plateau after going through a long and painful victory road. That still was much a pain today as it was back in the day. Still a massive pain to get through. Anyway, so when I used to do this, I used to brute force my way through, just playing a ton of max heals and revives as a kid. Now we've got our team set up here, and these are the 6 that we're bringing in with me. I was unable to get Moltres, ran out of Pokeballs unfortunately, so I've got no choice. If I had Moltres, I could probably get through a lot easier. So the first Elite Four member is Lorelei. I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation. I've always just called it L'Oreal. Now, easiest way to L'Oreal is a ice water trainer, so I primarily used Zapdos for these fights because of the electric typing. Although some of our Pokemon are ice Pokemon, so I could, if I had Moltres, I could have gone through with Moltres, which would have been quite easy. Would have been a lot better. With Zapdos, it is still a relatively strong Pokemon to have at this time. Now, unfortunately, this is where it all goes a bit pear-shaped. Everything goes wrong. We're down to our last attack. We miss, which if that had hit, we would have got through. It would have been fine. Unfortunately, luck was not on our side, and I have to switch Pokemon. I switched to Onix, which was a mistake. Onix goes down in a single hit. We switch back up to Sailor. Unfortunately, he's a water type, so he doesn't have too much in the way of offensive attacks. We try to use a Aurora Beam, but Confusion confuses us and causes us to fail. We switch to Venusaur. Unfortunately, he goes down due to an ice attack. We switch to Cerberus, but Cerberus is also weak to Lapras, and he goes down in a single hit. We switch back to Dugong, and unfortunately Dugong is confused and continuously hits itself until it dies. I try to save it with a few full heals, but in the end he also succumbs to an attack right at the end. And now we've only got Frieza left, or Articuno, if you may wish to call her or it. L'Oreal is defeated, and we are free to move on to the next trainer, which is Bruno. At this point I've got one Pokemon to deal with the last 4 remaining challengers. Now Bruno is a rock type, and luckily rock types are weak to ice, so we pretty much take down every single ice Pokemon with a single hit, with a single ice move. And we're free to move on to our next challenger, which is Agatha. Now at this point I thought there was still a potential chance of me actually getting through this entire section, as ambitious and optimistic as that was. It was obviously not a very realistic choice, as it were. I thought Frieza would be enough to pull through, because when I played through this initially, I just caught the 3 legendary birds, had my main Pokemon that I carried through the entire game, the Venusaur that I had from the start, and that ended up allowing me to actually beat the Elite Four and the Challenger with basically just the one Pokemon I trained and catching the 3 legendaries. At this point it's just Frieza that's holding on for dear life. I'm causing some slight issues with some of the damage I'm doing. I've been poisoned as well. Unfortunately at this point I'm running out of PP. I don't have any PP left. Agatha goes to use a super potion. I'm still badly hurt by the poison. I've got a number of max potions I've still got. So, fighting off Agatha, we somehow managed to just about make it through there. I'm poisoned. Luckily I still have some antidotes left over from the previous times I went to the shop. I'll move Frieza up to the top. That's purely my choice, because it doesn't actually make any difference whatsoever. We finally hit the 4th Elite Four member, Lance, the Dragon Trainer, and at this point I basically have no choice but to use Peck, which unfortunately does absolutely minimal damage to Gyarados. I still managed to take Gyarados down. I level up, and then we get to Dragon out. We're using a couple of Pecks, a couple of super potions. We just keep going, and at this point I'm just like crossing my fingers, hoping, do I have enough max potions? Do I have enough to brute force my way with just this one Pokemon? And unfortunately no. Unfortunately that's it. That's the end of our journey, I'm afraid. That's as far as I could get on this first time Pokemon Red Nuzlocke. Now I've had the later games that are easier to complete, but honestly towards the end I kind of hoped my old strategy would work, and it didn't pay off in the end. So we've got a list of all the dead Pokemon that accompanied us on this journey. So rest in peace to them. And this has been my arguably failed, I don't know how you can say ugly, it did fail, my failed run. But for a first time, it was okay. It was certainly, I don't think I'd do a Pokemon Nuzlocke again, not after all the pain it was. You know, I prefer my Pokemon games to be a more casual experience. I'm a fan of challenge runs, but a Pokemon Red, or just a Pokemon Nuzlocke challenge really wasn't for me. When I got to the end, I realised I'm not having as much fun as I could or should be having, and that did lead to me making some hasty decisions and just hoping that I'd force my way through it, which obviously, as you can see, failed. Anyway, here's a list of all the dead Pokemon that didn't make it. All the Pokemon I caught that didn't make it. Thanks for watching. Maybe you'd like to click on one of these videos for more. Alternatively, you could subscribe and check out my selection of guides, comical videos and co-op playthroughs. I recommend the Pokemon Crystal playthrough. It's very good if I do say so myself. Alternatively, you can give my brain a hit of dopamine by clicking the like button or leaving a comment. I could really use more dopamine.